What is up, everyone? I am here. I was lying to the YouTube chat. I told them I'm not here, but here I am. But I might leave at any moment on my fast car. What's up, everyone? Lil Eddie went from stomping people on TikTok a minute ago to doing a stream. What a G. Thanks, James. It got me fired up. I'm like, this app is so ridiculous. These people are so stupid. They're literally so stupid on TikTok, you guys. You can't even talk. What's up, Ware Pilgrim? You literally can't even bring up Tucker Carlson or Marjorie Taylor Greene and talk about the role that these people play, which is very interesting, right? They're anti-establishment, like pseudo-populists on the right. Okay, and you guys are my core audience, right? We watch the streams. Have I ever told you that we need to push for Marjorie Taylor Greene or Donald Trump? Or go vote for them or volunteer for them? Right? I was against the MAGA communism thing, and that got me a lot of crap from communists and socialists. Because I felt like it was tailing, like I said, these pseudo-populist figures like Trump. Right? But it's very interesting that the only people in the establishment criticizing the war in Ukraine, or, you know, in some cases throwing shade at Jeff Bezos and people like that, are these figures on the right. That's worth analyzing. And Tucker Carlson has absolutely taken an anti-establishment turn recently. He just had Glenn Greenwald on his show. Right? Does that mean I think Tucker's a socialist? No. Does that mean I think Comrade Tucker Carlson's going to bring forward the revolution? No. Does that mean I forgive Tucker Carlson for being a Fox News propagandist for 10 years and helping to lie the country into the war in Iraq and all that terrible stuff? Or, you know, promoting racist immigrant fear-mongering? No. Obviously not. That's why I've criticized him for that stuff a million times. But I don't think that's why Fox News fired him. That's why this is not me supporting Tucker Carlson. It's a critique of Fox News. It's saying Fox News loved Tucker Carlson when he was immigrant fear-mongering and supporting the war in Iraq and supporting the foreign policy interests of the military-industrial complex. But the second he pushes back, now they're pushing him out. Right? And people are saying it's because of the Dominion case, this lawsuit where he lost Fox News money. Maybe. But Fox News lost like dozens of advertisers a while back because there was a campaign to basically cancel Tucker and anyone associated with him. And they hung on to him then. Right? He's the most popular cable news show in the country. You really think they would just give him up unless he wasn't doing their bidding anymore? He wasn't speaking to their interests, which is, you know, that's how the media establishment works. Read Inventing Reality by Michael Parenti. That is when they push you out of the media establishment. And I can't wait till we get some leaked documents or something, or some leaked emails from Fox News where people are saying, or where it turns out that, you know, there's some military contractor who contacted someone at Fox News, or someone from the FBI who contacted Fox News and told them to get rid of Tucker. And it turns out that that's actually what happened. And then will any of these liberals apologize? No. Because the liberals aren't here to critically think. They're not trying to analyze, you know, what role these right-wing populist, pseudo-populist figures like Trump and Tucker play within the broader class struggle. They're just here to dogpile on people they don't like online. Oh, conservative figure got fired. Okay, everybody make fun of him on Twitter, and anybody who's trying to figure out why he got fired, or anyone who's ever agreed with anything that he's ever said, is a conservative and is a MAGA person. A lot of people have definitely lost the plot. I think Eddie playing guitar is the best intro we can get. Nice. What happened on TikTok? Nothing. It's just every time anytime I really harshly criticize, because I don't follow like liberal or social democrat Twitter or like leftist Twitter really and what they're doing. So sometimes I'll come across a politician like John Fetterman, or I'll come across an issue like this Tucker Carlson thing, and I'll say something that's against the liberal or the leftist hive mind. And then a bunch of people freak out on me, and I'm not expecting it. And I'm like, why do you all think this way? And usually it's because MSNBC and these other outlets are pushing some kind of narrative that people have bid onto. And then they lash out at anything that goes against that. But like the lack of critical thinking, like go read the TikTok comments. It's like, bro is conservative. Bro is supporting Tucker Carlson. Okay, and obviously not. I covered that. I've criticized a million things Tucker has done. But then like someone said, bro is going to be supporting Marjorie Taylor Greene next. Like, well, if Marjorie Taylor Greene said something that I agreed with, I would be honest about that. I would not lie and pretend that I disagree with what she said because I dislike her as an individual. Right? This is the individualist liberal way of seeing the world and way of thinking. You know, I either like you or I don't like you, and then I work backwards from my conclusion. Right? If Marjorie Taylor Greene does something I agree with, I'll be like, yeah, I agree with that. You know, I don't think she's got the right idea about A, B, and C, which is why I'm not going to support her, endorse her, tell people to follow her, and why I'll criticize her on other issues. I'm not going to lie and say I disagree with everything she's ever said. But that's the position a lot of leftists and a lot of liberals want you to take. And it's just a barrier to truth. Like, it's so obvious that this is idealism, anti-dialectical, and it's a barrier to truth. Could they have wanted to get rid of him for a while, but waited after the Dominion case was settled in order to avoid having him work with Dominion to strengthen their case out of revenge? Totally. Totally. That's the other thing. It could be a combination of factors. But there's a lot of people who won't even have that conversation. They won't even have the conversation of, like, why did he get pushed out? Which is an interesting conversation, right? Because it tells us something about the media establishment. It tells us something about the folks who own Fox News and the kind of message that they're trying to propagate. But people are too freaking thick-skulled to see that. And they're just like, Tucker's a Putin propagandist and you're a Putin propagandist. That's like my voice I usually use for conservatives, talking like this. But right now I'm making fun of liberals because a lot of times liberals are more stupid than conservatives. The Westoid, leftoids are stuck in the 2016 culture war. They're stuck in something. They need some dialectical materialism in their lives. Let's watch some of the videos on this. I got to fire it up. I just started the stream. Shut up, Eddie.
Really interesting given his anti-establishment turn lately. Wow, Tucker Carlson is leaving Fox News, where he had the most popular show on cable television. And a lot of people are saying that they think Tucker actually got fired, which would be really interesting given his anti-establishment turn lately. Tucker has been one of the only voices in the mainstream media who's willing to criticize the NATO proxy war effort in Ukraine. And he was recently the only one who criticized the government for prosecuting these black socialists in St. Louis, who they're claiming are Russian propagandists or something. And Tucker even admit.
That's the other thing that no liberal in my comments who's upset has brought up. Tucker just defended the Uruhu socialist movement. These black socialists who are being arrested for spreading Putin propaganda. The only voice in the establishment media or in cable news who said anything about it was Tucker because he had Glenn Greenwald on his show. But you're not allowed to bring that up because Tucker bad, Tucker evil. You're not allowed to say maybe that's a reason that Rupert Murdoch and his Raytheon buddies wanted to go separate ways with Tucker. You're not even allowed to bring that up as a reason. If you bring that up as a potential reason for why Fox News pushed him out, you are literally a conservative. You literally support Trump. You're no longer a communist. Give me your communist card. You are now a fascist, according to liberals in my TikTok comments.
Admitted for like the 10 years leading up to this, he would tell a lot of lies on his show. He helped lie us into the war in Iraq. And as much as I disagree with the guy in a lot of his coverage in the past, I can almost guarantee you he got fired because of this anti-establishment turn that he's made in the last year or so. Crazy time.
And this is what's interesting too, Angie, Socialist Girl. Part of the reason Tucker has the most popular show in America is because every other outlet is so bad, because he's the only one who's willing to criticize the NATO war effort in Ukraine, because he's the only one willing to criticize the courts locking up these black socialists in St. Louis for being against the proxy war in Ukraine, right? Because MSNBC and CNN are so full of shit on these issues, people turn to Tucker Carlson, working people who understand that it's not in our interest to send all of our tax dollars to weapons in Ukraine while our infrastructure and railroads are crumbling here at home, right? That's obvious to a working class person. So Tucker's able to capitalize on their discontent and on working class sentiment, which is what we call populism and why we call it right-wing populism. But yeah, that's just an interesting aspect of it. But like, then the question is, how far can you take that, right? How far can you take that? Like Mehdi Hassan sometimes on MSNBC, he'll like talk about the war in Yemen, or he'll throw in a few anti-imperialist things, but then the next day he's doing liberal Democrat rhetoric that I'm sure keeps him his job. And there are
going to be talking about how he agrees with.
There are so many examples of people being pushed out of these establishment media networks because they got handed a story and they thought it was a crazy story that exposed what the U.S. was doing somewhere. And they ran with it and tried to publish it, and they got pushed out. MSNBC did it in the early 90s with the Gulf War when they had tapes of U.S. military personnel killing civilians, I believe, like really revealing tapes. So it's not like that would be unprecedented for them to do that. And that doesn't mean that I support and love every single person who got fired or pushed out of the establishment media and everything that they stand for. People do this same bullcrap with Scott Ritter. Like, how could you talk to Scott Ritter? He's not a communist. Okay, he's a military analyst and a weapons analyst who's who's been attacked by the imperialist establishment for telling some truth. Why would you not learn from someone like that? But some people, like I said, they're not interested in learning. They're interested in the internet dog pile on people that we don't like, that the hive mind doesn't like.
Bro's going to be talking about how he agrees with Marjorie Taylor Greene next. I mean, if Marjorie Taylor Greene said something that I agreed with, I would be honest about that and I would admit it. I try not to base my political analysis on the individuals or personalities that I like or dislike, especially in our two-party system with two pro-capitalist bourgeois parties. They're both bound to say a lot of things that I disagree with and occasionally say things I agree with. And this is my problem with a lot of leftists, the lack of critical thinking and just jumping to dogpiling on people we don't like, right? Like I have the hypothesis that maybe Tucker Carlson was pushed out of Fox News because he was doing a little bit of anti-war coverage. And a bunch of leftists jumped down my throat for even suggesting that. Like, are we not allowed to present unique thoughts or critically think about people that the left dislikes? Clearly, I'm not saying I support Tucker Carlson or the Republican Party, but that's what some people are saying, just because I presented an idea that's not as simple as Tucker evil.
And I guarantee we'll get some leaked documents at some point from within Fox News that tell us what happened. We know why they fired Bill O'Reilly now, right? Weren't there leaked emails around that? We know the MSNBC case that was eventually leaked to the public too. Like And this stuff comes out, but everyone's an anti-imperialist in hindsight. Everyone can look back historically after the documents have leaked. But you're not allowed to make hypotheses, anti-imperialist hypotheses in real time. Aaron Mate, Max Blumenthal, Jimmy Dore, Anya Parampil, all voices that corporate media won't tolerate. True threats to power. Couldn't agree more the day be about all of those figures. Thank you so much for the super chat. Aaron Mate's journalism is incredible. Anya is one of the best voices covering Venezuela and Latin America. Max Blumenthal, obviously incredible journalist as well. And then Jimmy Dore speaks to, a million people and amplifies the work of great journalists and sees through a lot of the BS of the establishment. So that's something that would get me canceled on TikTok too. You're not allowed to talk about Jimmy Dore. He's considered an evil right-winger. Nuances for wimps, LOL, right? Why have nuance when we can just hive mind and attack anyone? Bill O'Reilly often said racist things, but he never got fired for that. He got fired for there was public pressure, and then he was like a dick, wasn't he? Or maybe that was a separate thing, but there were leaked documents that showed he's horrible to work with. Liberals blow my mind. So much for left unity. We need class unity, not leftist unity. And liberals are not any kind of pro-working class. Personal favorites, Richard Medhurst. Yeah, Richard's awesome. Richard will tell the truth about this. Richard will tell the truth about Tucker Carlson, promise.
This just in to CNN.
Here's
Tucker
CNN's
Carlson
coverage of
is
it.
out at
This is
Fox
interesting.
News, the right-wing network.
What if CNN offers him a job? That would be awesome.
Just announced the two have parted ways. CNN senior media.
And I wonder what that means, because people are saying he got fired, but then what they said is that they parted ways. So I don't know. I also wonder if Tucker makes a YouTube channel now, because like I said, he's still got the largest audience of any cable news pundit in the country, which is part of the reason that CNN gives him so much free coverage, because they know that they can get views by covering him. But neither here nor there.
Reporter Oliver Darcy is here with more on this. What are you learning? He was out on Friday. Will we see him say goodbye?
We're not going to see him say goodbye.
Daily Wire is the way to go. Yeah, that's actually probably what will happen, because the Daily Wire has a lot of corporate money behind them. I don't even know if they have the money to afford someone like Carlson, but it'll definitely be one of those internet outlets. And yeah, let me on your show, Tucker. I'll debate you.
This is really stunning news coming from Fox. They say his last show was April 21st. They put out a very short statement. They say they thank him for his service, and that's it. That's all we know right now. But of course, this comes days after. Last week, you remember, Fox News settled this massive defamation lawsuit with Dominion Voting Systems over the election lies that it promoted.
Oh yeah, Don Lemon's out too. It's a lot of shakeups in cable news. Don Lemon definitely didn't get pushed out because of his anti-establishment views. He was just getting dunked on all the time. I kept seeing so many people making fun of Don Lemon. So many of those videos.
In the wake of the 2020 election. So they paid out $787 million, the highest known defamation settlement ever publicly known in U.S. media. So this is coming days after that. Unclear, of course, whether this is related. It's kind of hard to imagine that these things happen.
So this is what the mainstream media is saying, and I'm not saying the defamation case doesn't have anything to do with it. It could. But that makes sense. This is the line that everybody's taking on TikTok, or that all the liberals are taking on TikTok, that it was because of this defamation case. So it makes sense that is stemming from CNN. But, anything that CNN says, you got to keep in mind, it's probably not true just because they, by virtue of them saying it. Just kidding. But Either way, I guarantee, I promise, 110%, Tucker criticizing the war effort in Ukraine and things like that has something to do with it. That's just the truth. And after I got banned on TikTok for the 7th time, I told myself I'm not going to feed the liberal hive mind, and I'm just going to tell the truth. And that is the truth. I don't like TikTok very much. It's a terrible app. There hasn't been any studies done on the number of bots, but I guarantee you it's got almost as many bots as Twitter, where 60 to 80% of Ukraine war commentators on Twitter are bots, 90% of them being pro-Ukraine bots. Debate Vouch, you coward. He's the one ducking me, you coward. James Smith, way to bring shame to our last name. Damn. Don't run around bringing shame to the name Smith like this. I am down to debate Vouch. I've said that a million times. I fly out for Las Vegas tomorrow morning for the U.S. Open. If Vouch can make weight and meet me there, I will debate him after I smash him in wrestling. But anytime after I'm done getting this All-American award and winning this prize money and putting it towards revolution in the Communist Party, I'm down to debate Vouch at any time. So tell him to hit me up. I haven't heard back from him since I accepted his challenge. Get wrecked, James Smith. Is that because of the company that took over TikTok, or was it always like that? No, dude. TikTok used to be freaking awesome. Like, the algorithm is still awesome. Like, it, as in it'll like boost anyone and let pretty much anyone go viral, no matter how few or how many followers you have, which is cool. But it doesn't work like it used to. It doesn't work like it used to, where it was all based on like stitching people and duetting people. Now it's really easy for videos to get pulled down. The community guidelines are super strict, and their policy for enforcing them, or whatever program that they have to enforce it, doesn't really make any sense. It like bans accounts wrongfully all the time and takes down videos wrongfully all the time, and their appeal process doesn't even make any sense. And then you learn that, of course, or now we've learned that they have NATO officials, State Department officials, and CIA officials working with the content management at TikTok. So managing what people are allowed to see. So like, I swear I used to do a video. I would just talk about the coup in Chile, talk about how the CIA overthrew Salvador Allende when he was elected. Richard Nixon said, make the economy scream. IMF and the World Bank took their funding or financing from $200 million a year to $2 million a year. They put them under economic sanctions, eventually did a coup that put the fascist Pinochet in power, killed 2 million people in the soccer stadium, blah, blah, blah. Tell the whole story. And it would get at least like 40,000 likes to 100,000 likes every time. Every time I told the story of a U.S. coup. There was just like no barrier. It was like the algorithm wasn't designed to push any narrative at all whatsoever, period. And that's just not what it's like anymore. Now you just get suppressed. And a lot of it's because of the number of libs on TikTok, but a lot of them are bots. Nobody, like, the comments that I see on a day-to-day basis, like, there's not that many stupid people in the world. I refuse to believe it. Cameron Smith, thank you for the $5 super chat. I love it. Hi, Eddie. Loved your video on capitalism and fitness. Neoliberalism and capitalism has also been terrible for dating. Incels and MGTOW, social media, too. You're so right, Cameron Murphy. Cameron, because you brought this up, I had a video that I wanted to watch. Did I call you Cameron Murphy? I meant to say Cameron Smith. I want to talk about a guy named Jack Murphy, who was one of these people profiting off the MGTOW, the manosphere, bullcrap, the whole thing. I mean, not that there isn't validity to like self-help and, you know, helping young boys find purpose and stuff like that. Like, we need that for sure. Therapy. But the manosphere, the MGTOW sphere, has become a way for a lot of scam artists to make money. And there was this guy, Jack Murphy, a former military guy, who was selling like his man club, his Learn How to Be a Man club, for like $700 a year. And he got caught doing some stuff that got him canceled by his own community. So I want to watch that. Thank you, Cameron. With dissent on the rise in the current rot of financial and cultural state of things within the West, we will likely see lower levels of capital building a stronger basis for alternative media. You're probably right. That's a good point. That's a good point because, like we were saying earlier, the lack of anti-establishment coverage in all of the mainstream media is what makes Tucker Carlson's show popular, a show where they say anything anti-establishment popular. But they're more allowed to do that outside of cable news online. So, and now we have all these networks like the Daily Wire that are backed by big capital or medium capital, by the petty bourgeoisie and sections of the finance capitalists and the bourgeoisie even. Like PragerU. I think Dennis Prager is a pretty big like oil owner. I don't know. I could be wrong. But either way, yeah, I do think we'll see that on the rise. You also have people, it's hilarious watching like Andrew Cuomo is trying to do a YouTube show and like nobody's watching it. It's funny to see the disgraced CNN host fail. And we'll see what happens with Tucker. I don't know. He's got a pretty big audience though compared to like a Don Lemon. So it would be an easier transition for him. Thanks so much, Esther Bard, for the 20 pounds. Hey, Eddie. Thank you, Terry and Morales. Really appreciate. Is that Israel Adesanya? That is a sick profile picture. Props to you for that. And for the $10. This is a very basic question, so I apologize. What are some good books or resources to learn about communism? I have a video. It's a little outdated, but it's pretty good, called Eddie Liger's Path to Understanding Communism or Socialism or Marxism or something, where I lay out every book you should read. We also have an online library on MidwesternMarks.com, but I would say Principles of Communism, Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, Stalin's Dialectical and Historical Materialism, Mao's On Contradiction. Yeah, that should get you started. Great question. Never a bad question to ask. Nice, Terry and Morales. Absolutely. I love answering theory questions any and all the time. So this is the thing I was talking about. This is the guy who was scamming people.
Things up and potentially embarrass him.
Well, I'll just play the clip. This is the girl who was interviewing this guy when he got exposed. And we'll see if she covers everything here. How much this guy was charging people to be in his man club.
Life is weird. Here we go. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to hell. And as per usual, this video is sponsored by me. Go subscribe to the email list on my website if you so desire, or buy some of my merch. I don't know. You do you. Now, some of you may or may not be aware that I was involved in an incident on my show, You Are Here with Elijah Schaefer on Blaze TV, on our last episode of the year, which was on the 17th of December, for those of you who need all the details. It was, in fact, a beautiful way to round out 2021. It really gave me the warm and fuzzies. I will play the clip, but for those of you who haven't seen it, and for context and a refresher, we brought on a guest called Jack Murphy, and the show was going really well up until the end when I was reading super chats, and I read one that referenced an article that he had written some years ago, and he got very upset and swore at me. And then at the end of the show, he got up and briskly walked away. Like I said, I will play that clip now, but for those of you who want to see the full episode or think there's more context to be had from watching it, I will link it in the description box and also give you the timestamp.
So just for full context, this lady's like a conservative host at The Blaze, which was, speaking of Tucker Carlson going and starting his own cable or his own internet news network. The Blaze was like Glenn Beck's, I think, or someone like that. A bunch of like former AM radio hosts or Fox News hosts like Glenn Beck did this internet thing called The Blaze, and it was kind of like weird, and it was a lot of old guys who were like out of touch with the newer conservatives, the younger conservatives. They were just kind of like weird, and a lot of them were like hyper religious. I don't know. But she's a host on The Blaze, or she was.
that are the most relevant so that you don't have to find them yourself. So yeah, here's the clip in question. Mr. Dick and Balls says, "Hey Jack."
See, that's what she does. She does this. Like she reads it like that's normal. Like it's not even. She's not even saying, I'm not gonna skip the name. She just goes, "Mr. Dick and Balls said."
Could you please clear up the cock article you wrote?
I am not going to talk about.
Sorry, I muted myself. She said, "Could you please clear up the cuck article you wrote?" She just asked him that out of nowhere right after they were saying that she reads off questions really straight-faced. Or reads off really vulgar things.
Ball said.
Could you please clear up the cock article you wrote?
I am not going to talk about
Again?
this.
Okay.
And basically, you know what? Fuck you for bringing this up right here and right now.
Me?
Why are you
Do you see how angry he got so fast?
doing this to me?
I didn't know that. I didn't know what it was.
Well, just use a little bit of fucking common sense.
Sorry, apologies.
Yeah. Fuck you. Heartfelt.
Elizabeth Harris.
Heartfelt, this manly man military guy who's charging people $700 for his man club just said F you heartfelt to this woman for asking him about the cuck article that he wrote. Actually, this is probably the wrong video to show. We should show one of these weird videos summarizing what happened. Because this will show the guy's actual article. I went and read the guy's article. It's very interesting. Thank you, VLX. Thoughts on OnlyFans and prostitution in general? I think it follows capitalism wherever it goes, because capitalism forces people into a situation where they have to commodify their own human sexuality in order to live and survive. Sex work and prostitution has followed it wherever it goes. I think OnlyFans is just, a modern form of that, a way technology has made it easier to sell your own sexuality to people online. I don't shame anybody for doing it, of course. I don't think it's necessarily healthy, personally, but I recognize it as, sex work under capitalism and something that a lot of people have to do in order to pay the bills. Something that a lot of single moms probably have to do to feed their kids, So see it as a systemic thing. But thanks for a $2 chat.
So Jack Murphy's exit from the whole manosphere, from the conservative side of things, I'm not really sure exactly what label Jack Murphy would fall under, but I do know that his exit from relevance was very embarrassing. But what might be even more embarrassing and even more sad is his attempt to come back.
I think some men are participating in OnlyFans earning money also. Yeah, I mean, it's something that forces, having to sell yourself into sex work to survive under capitalism is something that disproportionately affects women, but of course it's something that affects men too. And OnlyFans is the same.
Back into relevance. And we'll get into that in 1 second. Obviously, if you don't know, you should do your own research on what happened with Jack Murphy in the past. It was really bad, and it's just too much to go into in this video. There were so many things that happened with the Sidney Watson stuff and the Elijah Schaefer.
Wait, is this about this guy making a comeback? See, this is why I plan the videos ahead of time, because I want to find a video that explains what actually happened. These videos are
Today's
also
video is
stupid.
sponsored.
I didn't know what it was.
Well, just other than to say,
I don't know. We're not going to find it. But basically, he was charging people $700 to learn how to be a real man and have masculinity. And it was all these traditional values, right? You got to be a man. You got to be with one woman. You got to follow these traditional rules, blah, blah, blah. Pretty normal conservative stuff. Manosphere, MGTOW stuff. But then that lady exposed him because people had dug up an article that he wrote about how he liked, I feel uncomfortable even talking about it, but how he liked his girlfriend getting with other guys and how that was his thing. He liked being cucked is the word. So this guy charging people $700 for him to tell them to maintain traditional values 5 years ago was, doing all sorts of exotic sexual stuff. And that totally imploded the guy's career. That ruined the man's career. Nobody would buy his manly man club anymore. So, You know, retweet if you cry every time. How dare you expose my $700 grift? Exactly. But that's so predatory, though. Going back to what got me on that topic. Like, how predatory is that? Like, who out there, what kind of, lost people are willing to pay $700 for that guy to teach them how to be a man, how to be a person, how to act? That's so sad. That just shows the lack of community that we have, to where people feel so lost for a connection that they're willing to pay that kind of money to try and just be an alpha male with all the friends and all the girls. So yeah, I was listening to that today while I was standing in the sun in the morning, getting those light photons. I want to watch a classic video. This is one of my favorites. If I had a Twitch show
and then
or a YouTube show when this happened, and I remember when this happened, I totally would have covered it right away. And that is the debate, the epic, legendary debate between Joseph Rogan and David Rubin, conservative commentator and podcaster, mixed martial arts meat eater extraordinaire. Meet for an epic debate about construction regulation, in which the ideology of libertarianism takes a blow that it has yet to recover from.
I have a bunch of stuff I want to say.
What problem would you, everything you're building here right now, right? Do you want the government to tell you how to do all these things and all the regulations that you got to have your electric thing this far from this and like all of
the regulations like that for construction are important though. You do have to make sure that people don't do stupid shit.
But
make sure
generally,
you don't have a power lines near a water line. There's a lot of.
But I would put most of that on the builders though. They want to build things that are good. Now I get it.
That's not true. Listen, people
people are going to build
corners all the time. Like you have to have regulations when it comes to construction methods, or people are going to get fucked.
They cut corners when there are regulations anyway.
They do. They would cut a lot more if there weren't regulations.
I'm not totally.
You go to third world.
You can tell Dave Rubin's never been on a construction site in his life. He thinks there aren't like OSHA people, especially on like bigger construction jobs. Like there are regulators who come, and a lot of the times the foremen or the company who are trying to do things as cheap as possible and sometimes as unsafe as possible don't like OSHA regulators or people who come from the government or whatever agency and make sure that you're not breaking building codes. Because of course they're going to try and do things as cheap as possible. They get paid for it. They build you whatever. And they don't care if you give them a bad Yelp review, really. I mean, they do care, but that's not going to be enough to dissuade people trying to make money in the short term by cutting corners.
Countries and look at
and like you would know that's. I just muted myself while I was talking. That's obvious to anyone who spent a lot of time on construction sites.
Construction methods, they're fucking dangerous.
Yeah,
that's why schools collapse on kids in foreign countries sometimes. Like,
well, I'm not telling you that I'm against all regulation. Period. That's where I said intellectually I like that argument because you could make it. I think you can make a very sound argument that competition would force.
This is so funny. This is bourgeois idealism to a T right here. Now I understand what I just said makes no sense in reality. But I think you could make a really sound argument. I really like this idea that, like, okay, sure, the idea might sound nice in your head, right? It might sound like a good argument that, yeah, people have iPhones, so they'll just, anytime someone else is doing something bad, they'll film it, and that'll stop anyone from ever doing anything bad. That might sound nice, but that doesn't mean it's true. It's just not how it works in reality. In reality, if you allow a system based on private property where companies are just trying to make as much profit off a building as possible, they're going to cut corners. So why it's a much more realistic solution to manage production collectively.
People to do better work. Like if you're a plumber, you have a vested interest in doing the best plumbing job you can so that people will rate you on Yelp so that you will get more work. You don't have a vested interest in cutting corners. Now you might, right? You're going to push it as much as you can.
Delete the government and replace it with Yelp. Libertarianism 2023.
to save as much time and energy
Actually, this was like 2021.
and money as you can. But once you go over that edge, yeah, you don't want to be known as the guy that you tighten something too much so that you flooded the house, or when you're building a house.
You're thinking logically, though. When people fuck things up and short things and do things terrible, they're not thinking logically.
But I don't think it's the government.
A lot of times they are, though. They're just thinking, well, it can be attributed to laziness, but a lot of times construction companies try and cut corners. I mean, not just construction companies, companies in general. Any company that produces commodities tries to cut corners to make it as cheap as possible. Right? Because the less they have to pay for the production of their commodity, the higher their margins are going to be. Right? The more money they're going to make, the more surplus they're going to make from the sale of that commodity. So, of course, they're going to cut corners and try and pay as little for labor and as little for their capital, fixed and circulating capital, as they possibly can.
And I don't think it's the government that they're like, the government gave me this regulation, so that's why I'm going to do it right.
Well, if they didn't have any regulations, there'd be no incentive whatsoever to do it right.
No, there would be an incentive.
If they knew there were no inspectors, no one was going to check their stuff and make sure that their stuff was up to code. Listen, man, I was in construction my whole life. My dad was an architect.
Yeah.
I've been in construction.
This is my favorite part. Joe's getting so annoyed. He's like, dude, you clearly you're just talking nonsense. You've never been on a construction site. My dad worked construction. You're talking about how we don't need inspectors and regulators, and how the inspectors who come oversee the construction site can write you a ticket or get you in huge trouble or shut you down if you're not following regulations. How those people don't have any influence, or they don't have any purpose, or they don't have any function. You're saying that people wouldn't cut corners. You're just saying all these things that are objectively not true if you've been on a construction site. And Joe Rogan clearly has, because of his upbringing, like he said. You can tell he's just getting so annoyed that Dave Rubin won't even listen to him. Because capitalist bourgeois ideologues, and this is what I wrote in my article about neoclassical economics, and capitalist ideologues, they work backwards from the conclusion that the market is best, that the market does everything correctly. So if objective reality proves their conclusion wrong, if it proves their hypothesis wrong, they just explain around it or they ignore it. It'll be like, okay, maybe I like some regulations, but ultimately Yelp will regulate everything mostly. It's like, no, just no, dude. But he has to elevate the market above all else and pretend it's really like a religious worldview is what it is. And I think Dave Rubin's religious, isn't he? It's a dogmatic religious worldview and where the market just determines everything best. And even if objective reality shows that that's not true, it's still true.
Construction since I was a little kid. You fucking need regulations.
Can you write a bad review after the ceiling falls on you? Exactly.
These guys, a lot of people that are in construction, they'll do whatever the fuck they can to make money, and it's not good for the people that have the house because they might have that house for 5-10 years before that problem manifests itself. The people who are establishing these,
Dave Rubin, it's interesting to hear him now talk on the same stage as Jordan Peterson, because I think Jordan's pretty silly too, really, really silly and an intellectual fraud, but he's obviously more intelligent than Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin's just if you have an iPhone in your pocket, you cannot be oppressed because iPhones are cool. And technology is cool. So even if you're broke or even if you're in a dungeon or a sand mine, as long as you have an iPhone, you cannot be exploited. Saying stuff like that is this guy is a goof, but he got to start on the early internet just being the guy who's hey, I'm a conservative and I'm gay. Right. And this was at a time when a lot of conservatives were no longer being bigoted about the gay issue. A lot of them were starting to change their mind because they knew gay people in real life or whatever. And Dave Rubin was able to get really popular off that, but he's still grifting around. And he embarrasses himself a lot.
Codes are licensed builders or people that have been involved in construction for a long fucking time, and they know what's safe and what's not safe. That's why those codes exist. It exists to protect the consumers. You can't just protect the consumers through the marketplace because it takes a long time.
They exist to protect the workers too, like OSHA safety violations, right? And he's attacking Dave's whole belief system here. He's attacking the whole dogma of neoclassical economics, of let the market decide, laissez-faire economics, just with this one issue, by going into the facts, by going into the concrete, by actually looking at the workplace, by actually really doing a class analysis. Rogan's able to not a thorough class analysis, but by looking at the reality, the material facts of the situation, he's able to poke holes in the entire libertarian bourgeois ideology.
For these problems to become a real issue, and these problems could potentially damage everybody in the neighborhood. It's not just going to affect the person on this one lot. Like if a fire starts, it burns all the houses in the neighborhood, or if a flood happens and it floods everyone downhill, it's a real problem. Like,
that's right. I was kind of wrong about Dave Rubin. He started on the Young Turks and then said, I'm becoming a Republican because the left has gone crazy. Like he is such a grifter. I always talk about this, how I realized once I started doing more YouTube and TikTok, like how strong the incentive to grift actually is. Like how strong the incentive is for me to just trash Tucker Carlson and just say, you know, whatever everybody's thinking about Tucker Carlson, some meaningless, you know, Tucker Carlson sucked. He's fear-mongered about immigrants, and therefore I'm glad he got fired. You know, that video would get a ton of views and liberals would love it and they'd all like it and share it with their friends. But if I give an honest analysis of the situation, I say, I think there's potential that Tucker was pushed out by the military industrial complex contractors and executives at Fox News because he was critical of the war effort in Ukraine. You know, then a bunch of liberals jump down your throat and demand that, everybody unfollow you. So the pull is always there to grift. And if you're someone like Dave Rubin with no dignity, you can just hop around like, I'm with the Young Turks now. Oh, here's why I left the left. Here's why. You just run from company to company.
Like you have to be real careful with construction.
I get it. And, my dad wasn't in construction, so I'm not privy to like all of that, the little stuff. But I genuinely believe that as a general level, people have a vested interest in, especially now because of phones and apps and Yelp and all of the things, doing good work, because that's how you will get more work.
I agree.
You're never going to remove the people who will do shoddy, shitty, malicious shit.
But you can keep them at bay with regulation. But what's the solution if someone pollutes? If you're not going to have regulation, what is the solution if someone does something that's illegal?
Well, if you're not going to have a regulation, it wouldn't be illegal, but you're...
Yelp is the only way, Joe Rogan.
The question is...
Well, it's illegal to dump things into the river, right? I mean, it's just illegal. So that's not a matter of regulation. I mean, polluting, willful poisoning of rivers.
I'm sure is actually
eco-terrorism.
Illegal. Right.
It would be a bunch of
So what those guys would argue is what I said before, which is that ultimately, especially now because of technology, like in the old days, so like every time someone cuts regulation, I've heard Bill Maher say this a lot, they're going to start polluting the river immediately. That implies that these businessmen, whatever industry that they're in, that they're immediately going to be like, the regulation's gone, start polluting the water. We live in a time now where everyone's walking around with an iPhone, where maybe 50 years ago, you could have got away with a lot of bad shit, right? Coal miners that were breathing all kinds of horrible shit that nobody was ever going to.
And now nobody pollutes the river, even though we have islands of garbage floating in some of the oceans. I believe in the Pacific Ocean, like an island of garbage, because we all have iPhones. Now we have iPhones that we throw in the trash as soon as a new one comes out. So that is stop pollution. How many of you in the chat, tell me right now, have seen somebody littering or have seen somebody polluting, and you pull out your iPhone and you film it, you post it on Twitter, and you say, this is James Jones, and they were littering at this address. Shame them. And then you write a Yelp review of their small business. A very angry Yelp review about how they littered, and then that stops them from littering. That stops them from breaking the law and doing things that's harmful to the community. That's what Dave Rubin is saying right now, that because of iPhones, because we can all film each other, we can act as like the NSA, we can act as an actual like Big Brother 1984 authoritarian government snitching on each other all the time through the internet, and therefore we don't need government regulations in construction. And as Socialist Girl said, it is just idealism. That's all this is. It's the dogmatic faith in the market. The market is best. Neoliberalism is best. And don't show me anywhere where the market doesn't work best in reality, because I'll just deny it. Working backward from your conclusion.
Going to find out about, where now everybody is walking around with Snapchat and Instagram and blah, blah, blah. So a lot of the stuff.
See, and that is socialism, Puerto Rican vegan music socialist. Once we all write enough Yelp reviews about microplastics and climate change, that's socialism. So Dave Rubin's actually arguing for socialism here. Little known fact. That's what Marx saw socialism as. That really stopped the cops too. Thank goodness for the cameras. Right, yeah. Now because everybody has cell phones and iPhone cameras, the cops don't shoot anybody or hurt anyone, right?
Would be exposed more, so that
was sarcasm, by the way.
All of the things that we've been talking about for the last couple hours about people getting involved, a lot of the things I think would start self-regulating. But again, and then I won't say it again, I'm not for just deregulating everything. I just think there's probably better ways to do it than just having the government.
And this is the other thing. They think that taking away the government would magically make everything work better. Like everything in capitalism would all of a sudden start working. There wouldn't be crises anymore, right? There wouldn't be crashes every few years. Even though, government bailouts and the Fed and things like that and regulation are intended to stop the economy from crashing all the time, and stimulus that government pump into corporations. These libertarians are like, if you take all the government regulations away and all the building inspectors away from the government, then all of a sudden people with their iPhones would just do that job. Like, no, why? Why would that start happening? Why would people all of a sudden have time in their day to film construction sites to make sure that people aren't cutting corners? The hell are you talking about? It's just wild. What socialist country? This is a good question. What socialist country do you think new ML should learn about first? Thank you for the $5 super chat. I really appreciate you supporting the project. Cuba is a good one. I mean, probably honestly the Soviet Union. Just because it was the big, the first in history. And like, if you learn about China's history, you're going to read about the debates that they were having within the Communist Party. They're looking at what the Soviet Union did, saying what worked, what didn't work, and how can we apply this to our conditions, right? How can we use what they learned to benefit our construction of socialism? So it's good to know about the Soviet Union because every following socialist experiment had the Soviet Union to use as a jumping off point. As an experiment, excuse me. The funny thing is all the rich people are the ones putting money to build things with no regulations. Their buildings would all just fall down. They would. They absolutely would. And without their workers, their buildings wouldn't be built at all. Thank you very much, Emmanuel Toribio. What currency is that? DOP? I got to look it up quick. Dominican peso. Nice. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you supporting our project. Boom, Eddie agreed with me. For sure.
Government come in and say, this is what you got to do, and now figure it out. Because the government isn't that good at most things.
If you live in the U.S., definitely Cuba. That's true, too. You could learn about Cuba first. Sorry, Kyle. We're not going to listen to you today. You can learn about Cuba first because it's really related to the U.S. And it really shows you better than anything how imperialism acts as a fetter on socialism and socialist production. And how Cuba and Venezuela, you could say this about as well, but I mean, obviously to a much, much lesser degree, has always been a thorn in the side of the U.S. because it's this communist revolutionary country right under the nose of the United States. And we've held them under these sanctions and spent billions of dollars on propaganda and regime change efforts and opposition groups for years without being able to overthrow their government, without being able to overthrow the revolution. So it makes the U.S. look really bad, especially when Cuba's kicking our ass in things like healthcare. So, yeah. Get out of here, Kolinsky. Learning about Cuba was a wake-up call for me. That was Venezuela for me. That was definitely Venezuela. The government isn't good at most things on purpose because they're made up of the rich, so privatization is the goal. I try and say that a lot of the time. Like, the social programs that are enacted, like Medicare and Medicaid, are popular, but the politicians, because they serve corporations, they're always trying to dismantle Medicare and Medicaid, just like the Tories in the UK are always trying to dismantle the NHS and go towards marketization or privatization. Because any public or social programs that we do have, they're going to try and get rid of, and they're going to try and make them inefficient. So then they can point and like, go, see, told you the government's inefficient. Let's just privatize everything. And it's like, you're the one who made it inefficient. Stupid politicians. But that's the game we play. Cuban from Miami here, and it's so hard to find people with a decent take on Cuba. Well, yeah. Yeah, there's not much you can do in Miami. I mean, the younger generations are better than the older ones. They're more open to like social democracy, but I mean, yeah, this is what you're going to expect. That's where the whole bourgeois class fled. And the U.S. was just like, hey, come over here. Chill in Miami. Hey, fight in the Bay of Pigs invasion for us. Oh, it didn't work and a bunch of you died? Sorry. It was their idea, though. We had nothing to do with it. For me, it was learning about China's intervention in Tibet. When I was in high school, the Free Tibet movement was popular. And I read into it and found out that China freed those people from a theocratic slave state. Yes, the Dalai Lama being, one of the main monarchic rulers of the Tibetan peasants, and he would torture them and gouge out their eyes and stuff if they disobeyed him. Why are so many Cubans from Miami so against Cuba? Because, like I kind of was joking about earlier, after the revolution, that's where the U.S. encouraged the Cuban plantation owners and the Cuban bourgeoisie to flee to. And they offered them refugee status and had them working with the CIA. And eventually it was a bunch of Cuban exiles, a bunch of Cubans who fled, who led the Bay of Pigs, who basically got killed in the botched invasion to try and take over Cuba. So that's just where a lot of anti-Cuban, the defeated bourgeoisie, the defeated ruling class in Cuba, largely settled in Miami because it's just geographically really close. And because the CIA. Tibet was feudalism and slavery. Absolutely. That's an accurate description. If people want to see a video, Daniel Dumbrill, friend of Midwestern Marx, has a really good tour of Tibet, or one of the Dalai Lama's temples. It's like a tour that they give in China.
And so the wife was actually unable to bear children. So technically the owner could have, the master of this home, whatever you want to call him, he could have taken additional wives, but he didn't. He actually fell in love with one of the serfs, or at least had children with her, and had 3 children. But because of the law that once a serf, you're always a serf, no matter how many generations, no matter what you did, the children were basically illegitimate. They wouldn't have been able to become nobles ever. They would have had to remain serfs. And what ended up happening was the family convinced him to basically give away the wife and the 3 children. So not a very nice ending. She originally worked here making the chinca alcohol, distilling alcohol. But we'll continue on out to the courtyard. There was a much longer conversation with so many more details with our guide here, but it was extremely long and there was a lot of Chinese. So that's why I'm kind of doing a quick, brief overview for you. So what he explained here was, out of the floors here, the bottom floor was basically for storage, sometimes livestock or grain and stuff like that. The serfs would work on the second floor. They do a lot of their work on the second floor, but they wouldn't live here, of course. They lived out back there in a little kind of pit, which which I'll show you in a second. And there were actually 3 levels of serfs as well. And for that, I'm going to cut to a clip of our guide explaining those 3 levels.
这个3大领主就是政府、嘎夏政府、贵族、寺院这3个权威是3大领主。也可以说是当时西藏人口比例的话，他们才是5%的代表，最有权的人就是3大领主。3大领主，但是他们只占人。
There was nothing sorry, this has nothing to do with the video, but there was nothing socialist about Yugoslavia at the point where NATO bombed it, Miso? What about all the state-run industries that were hit by the NATO bombs, whereas the private or U.S. or international capital was left alone? They hit hundreds of state-run factories and power plants and the socialist headquarters of the leading socialist party and the second socialist party. So there were elements of socialism, or at least publicly owned industry, before the bombing, and after the bombing, it was all flattened.
人口的5%，但他们拥有的财富和土地有多少呢？他拥有的土地就是可以说是底下的剩下的95%，全部都是他们的财产。The 3 estate owners, the monks, the nobles. 还有一种是有这个僧人，这个贵族，还有噶夏政府 the government officials of the Gasha government. These 3 types of people are the estate owners back then. They only account 5% of the population of all Tibet back then, but they own 95% of all the land and livestock and like all properties.
Right.
所以吧，那时候整个西藏就是95%。
So there she described the property relations. Feudal property relations. The peasants had nothing, owned a tiny fraction of the land, while the ultra wealthy, the aristocracy, the religious elite owned 95% of the land, which the peasants worked on.
5%干活的。95% people work for the 5% of people.
Right.
才能使和西藏变成了两地之间生活差别是这样子。到处看到那个院子，看到这个院子里面住的就是95%的生活，95%里面还院子里面居住过的几个就是当时朗生级。
So when people tell you free Tibet, that's what they're saying they want to go back to. They want to free Tibet from communism and go back to the time when 95% of the population worked for 5% of the population who was rich and who would gouge out the eyes of the 95% if they disobeyed.
朗生就是家农，庄园里面的干活的那些，比如说是技术工吧，制坛子、铺路，还有这些炊事员、酿酒师这之类的。最低级的话没有那个建筑，全部都跟牲口一起住的。Even among the serfs, there were 3 different classes, 3 different levels.
Right.
And the top one is 第一个叫什么？差八。差八 the first class is they're kind of like they can borrow land from the owner and grow their own stuff, like the first class. 第二阶就是朗生就是家农。朗生是藏语的。是做一些家务啊。就是家务的里头的炊事员啊，就是什么制坛的这部分，他们可以说是技术工程。
But what we have to keep in mind is that Daniel Dumbrill is one of these evil YouTube vloggers sent by Xi Jinping to infiltrate the United States and spread Chinese propaganda. That's what he's been accused of being anyways by mainstream media, even though he's literally just a bar owner in Shenzhen who I've DM'd on Twitter with.
The second class in Tibet is called Langsheng, like who worked for the family, like the chefs, doing all kinds of household chores, or those things who actually work for the family. They're the second class.
Right.
第一级的话就叫对冲。
So yeah, he goes on to tell him stuff like the serfs would have their eyes gouged out if they disobeyed. So very, you could call it feudal serfdom, or you could call it slavery. And a lot of those feudal modes of production, like in agricultural China before the revolution, were basically a mix between feudalism and slavery as modes of production. But it's just wild that China's brought this place industry, abolished poverty in this place, brought a relatively decent standard of living to everyone in this place. And some people will poo-poo it, first of all, and say it's not real socialism, even though they freed the people from these feudal relations of production and brought them out of poverty. But then some people will say free Tibet, right? Because, I don't know, because Westerners like Buddhism and think it's spiritual or something, or they like Eastern spirituality, I guess. They'll yell, free Tibet, put the Dalai Lama back in power, end communism. Really? You want to put the Dalai Lama back in power so 5% of the wealthy religious elite can own all the land and everyone can work under them and be tortured if they don't do what they say? That doesn't sound like freedom to me. Although that's pretty in line with the freedom and democracy that the U.S. brings around the world. Well, we've got so many people on this stream. This is lit. 161 people total. Thank you. You can like and comment on the stream if you like video games also. Twitch.tv/MidwesternMarks and the Eddie Liger Smith gaming account. We talk Marxism and Final Fantasy. And the Final Fantasy to Marxist pipeline. So subscribe to Eddie Liger Smith Gaming. I got to subscribe with Midwestern Marks. Just hit our 80-second subscriber, and it's me. You popping off, my dude? Definitely. It's lit. I love it. I'll have to look up the Dalai Lama's political economic program. It's very interesting. Have you ever thought about making essay-style videos? Yeah, especially a lot more lately. Partially because AI technology is so good and it makes it so easy to like put together an edited like slideshow of clips and stuff. And also I've been working together with a couple editors lately. Right now I'm actually, I don't know if I should say this or not. I'll just say I'm working on an essay style video about a socialist experiment that everybody knows and loves. So what games you play, Eddie? On the gaming channel, we're playing Final Fantasy X right now. We'll probably play Final Fantasy 12 next. We love you, dude. Down to earth. I try to be. That's just that Midwestern ethic, baby. All the Midwestern socialists are down to earth. Speaking of the Midwest, I've been meaning to cover this forever, and I just keep forgetting to show it to y'all. But there was a truck that was leaving East Palestine, Ohio, where obviously the train derailed and leaked a bunch of toxic chemicals into the drinking water and stuff. Tuning in from work. Sup, y'all? What's up, Lane? Love when people watch while they're getting exploited. Organize those coworkers. We believe in you. But there was a truck that crashed and was carrying 40,000 pounds of toxic soil. So the EPA and the Biden administration keep telling us there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. It's just a bunch of hullabaloo on TikTok as they're trying to ban TikTok and censor social media and pushing social media bots. They're claiming that all the people talking about symptoms from the train crash and the toxicity are just, spreading nonsense, spreading rumors. And then this truck crashes with 40,000 pounds of toxic soil from East Palestine. So yeah, nothing to see here, everyone. Just keep sending money to Ukraine. Keep sending weapons to Ukraine. There's definitely nothing going on in Ohio. There's nothing toxic in the soil. Ignore the truck that was literally ferrying toxic soil out of East Palestine, Ohio. Like, bro, it was an open truck, and the truck was driven by a 75-year-old guy. Crazy. FF7 Remake is a great little game with a lot of anti-capitalist sentiment. Really? Well, I've beaten Final Fantasy 7. I love it. So maybe I'll play the FF7 Remake. If enough people follow the twitch.tv/MidwesternMarks and Eddie Liger Smith Gaming, we'll play the Final Fantasy 7 Remake. Boss makes $1, I make a dime. That's why I watch Midwestern Marks on company time. Yeah, baby. How poetic that of all the rural places it could have happened, it was in East Palestine. True. True. At first, I was like, when I first saw the headlines for the story, I was like, oh, what did Israel do now? What happened in Palestine today? Like, oh, East Palestine, Ohio. Not what I expected. It was being taken to Michigan, so Ohio doesn't have to establish storage guidelines for it. Oh, Should have known it was some weird bureaucratic regulatory thing. This is a follow-up on something that we were covering earlier.
Have you ever seen?
Oh, shoot. I gotta find another video of it now because mine's not working. But do y'all remember V-Shred, the capitalist fitness industry guy that we covered, who was selling people a bullcrap fitness program and lying to people and claiming that you can eat pizza and wings and stuff every day and have 0% body fat, even though you have to starve yourself to be able to see your ab? Well, that guy, wait till you see this slimy marketing tactic that he used. Yeah, I don't even like. Actually, I'm gonna try and just play it for you guys, and then see if you know what I'm talking about.
I sent him.
I gotta find it here quick. Gotta find the video I'm looking for that I want to critique. It's gonna be some dude bro, some fitness dude bro responding to it, but. So this is the V-Shred guy. This is the scammer. Not really. V-Shred is a company. It's owned by like 4 investors. And this guy is just a model that they hired to lie to people and tell them that they can eat large pizzas every day and still have 12-pack abs. But look at this setup here. What does this look like to you? This microphone, these headphones, and this background. It looks like... Yeah, I've seen those on TikTok. Probably everybody's seen this guy because they've just blasted him over everywhere. So he can lie to people and sell them an app. And think of how high the margins are on an app, right? It's not hard to make an app and put like 20 workouts and meal plans in there, right? And then they push the advertising and marketing really hard, tell people we have this secret app that'll make you skinny. Roganomics, JRE, Rogan, exactly. But is he on the Joe Rogan Experience? No. This dude set up a curtain, got the same microphone and headphones that they have on the Joe Rogan Experience, put the camera at the same angle that the Joe Rogan Experience films at, so he could pretend he was on the Joe Rogan Experience and tell people to take that quiz, baby. Find out if you're an ectomorph or an endomorph, and then you can just pound ice cream and pizza all day and never gain a pound.
Carbs,
fats, and meats, and never eating carbs. Fats, and meats, and never eating carbs.
and meats and never eating carbs.
Fats.
So yeah, that we don't have to watch this guy's whole video, but pretty hilarious that that's the new tactic he's using. While he tells people don't do cardio, don't eat carbs, all this just like outdated or unscientific or at least overly simplistic fitness advice from a model being paid to lie to people, pretending to be on Joe Rogan's. Like, come on. Okay, but respect the ingenuity. That's what Carlos and I said. We're like, we need to do this. We need to get on. We need to build a fake Joe Rogan studio. Play War Thunder, Eddie? I will if we get enough followers on Twitch and Midwestern or Eddie Liger Smith Gaming. All right, y'all. My flight leaves at 3 a.m. in the morning for Chicago. Or no, I got to be in Chicago, and then my flight leaves at 3 a.m. in the morning. So I'm going to go make sure I'm ready, make sure my bags are packed. I should be good, but just want to double check and make sure I have everything. So I'll be gone for a while at this wrestling tournament. You can follow on flowwrestling.com. I'll let y'all know probably on TikTok when I'm out there how you can follow. Yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Root for me. I'll be wrestling for the proletariat, and pray for me because I probably have to get one more workout in tonight before I go to sleep for 4 or 5 hours and then get on a plane. All right. See you, everyone. Thanks for hanging out before I head out. It was fun.